kind of worried about Obamacare in Arkansas. We got to do something about that, right?
Absolutely, and I think that your fears are healthy, and I think that they're appropriate. I think we definitely have to rally the troops. A lot of people may not know or realize that this Medicaid expansion that's really being discussed right now, and the talk around that is really kind of heating up. It's Obamacare. I mean, if the Medicaid expansion goes through, it is the establishment of Obamacare in the state. And so I think that's one thing that is really starting to sink in. I've seen 2 emails from 2 different really large Tea Party groups come through today. They're ready to rally the troops, and I hope people up there in Northeast Arkansas are ready to start working the phone lines and emails and getting in touch with their legislators about what's going on down at the Capitol. I wish I could tell you more about the proposals that are going to come out or that are out there, but the bottom line is everything that's been written so far about Medicaid expansion, if there's actually been anything put in ink, we haven't seen it. The legislators are going out into the media and talking about this wonderful plan that they've got. It's going to save all this money, and it's just going to be wonderful, and it's going to be a free market solution, save taxpayers all this trouble, blah, blah, blah. And yet they haven't released anything, and they're unwilling at this point to release anything. So there's a lot of frustration among the Tea Party groups and some of these other conservative organizations about what's really going on, because a lot like Obamacare, perhaps appropriately, and ironically here, it's all being done behind closed doors.
Wow, and that does sound something that would happen in Washington, D.C. We've got this great idea. It's going to be fantastic, but we're not going to show it until probably, maybe a day before it runs in committee or something like that?
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that, but that's kind of what it's starting to look like. I mean, the session is running out. We're hearing now that the session may be over in as soon as 2 weeks from now. And so that means even if it came out tomorrow, they're going to put a plan out that is going to fundamentally change the healthcare system in Arkansas, and we're only going to have a matter of 10 to 12 days to look at it before it's voted on. I mean, it's outrageous. And I don't know how much you've kind of covered this issue. I know we've been trying to keep up with it at the Arkansas Project. It's such a big issue, and there's been so much other stuff going on that we haven't really hammered away at it like we should have. But we've got a couple of articles up now if people want to go check those out. We're going to have some more research coming out soon. But basically what's happened in the last couple of weeks, just to catch everyone up, put everyone on the same page, Governor Beebe went to Washington, I guess about a month ago now, and met with Kathleen Sebelius, the Director of Health and Human Services, kind of the mother of Obamacare. She's in charge of really implementing the whole thing, and supposedly struck this deal with her that instead of just expanding Medicaid and adding 200,000 people to the public Medicaid program, what the Obama administration and Ms. Sebelius have apparently agreed to do is allow Arkansas to take that Medicaid money and purchase private insurance with that money and add those 200,000 people to private insurance plans. And so what Republican legislators have gone out and done is just, this is wonderful, this is, before it had even hit the media, we had Republican legislators out there saying, this is a private plan, this is free market based, this is going to fundamentally change our approach to Obamacare, just such a wonderful thing. And meanwhile, it's been several weeks, and we're yet to see a proposal. We're yet to see a plan. All we know about the plan is that it's going to add 200,000 people to the Medicaid program, and we have the Cato Institute's Michael Cannon now, who's come into Little Rock and said that according to the CBO, according to Congress, their own budget office, this plan would add $3,000 per person to those new enrollees. So instead of costing about $6,000 per person for the new Medicaid enrollees, it's going to cost about $9,000.
Wow.
And we've got Republican legislators running around telling us that this is a great idea, it's a free market approach, it's going to save taxpayers money. And as far as I can tell, it's a load of hogwash. Mm-hmm. And I'm being criticized, and the Arkansas Project and some of us are coming under fire for criticizing this plan and not supporting it because, it's so free market based. And yet there is no plan. No plan has been published. We haven't seen anything. And, I commented there. I said, this is like Nancy Pelosi 2.0. We've got to pass this Medicaid expansion package so we can find out what's in it. And once we do, well, we'll really like it. We'll really, it's really going to be great for the state.
Unbelievable.
Frankly, I just don't buy it. We want to see the plan.
Yeah, I completely agree. Hey, do you mind? I mean, you say Republican legislators? Is there? I mean, anybody we can call? I know they may not be our Republican legislators from this area, but I'd love to. We can start with these email campaigns now if we want.
Sure, absolutely. The Speaker of the House, Davy Carter, has been out. He was on Fox Business last week talking about how this was a free market approach. It was a game changer, and it was going to be just a really great idea. Again, it's hard to really scrutinize what he's saying because we don't know what the plan is. But I can tell you, and I can tell your listeners, it is Medicaid expansion, and it is the establishment of Obamacare in the state. So whether or not we're using public money to buy private insurance or we're using public money to buy public insurance or put people on public insurance, it doesn't really matter. It's still Obamacare.
And the only thing I can think of is, wow. I mean, if you're Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield, I mean, or you're an insurance company, you're thinking, sweet.
Exactly.
A new 200,000 people are going to come. They have to, or they're going to be able to purchase insurance from me, and there's all the money in the world for them to do it. Government money. I mean, this is ridiculous. What it sounds like, and I'm going to take some heat for this, but the CEO of Whole Foods originally criticized Obamacare as socialism, and then he came back and amended it, and he said actually it's fascism because the government doesn't own these entities; they're just trying to control them. And the insurance companies may not see it that way because they're going to get a bunch of money, but they're really controlling the marketplace even more. And the bottom line is, I really don't even care what these legislators say. The people of Arkansas don't want Obamacare. We know that much. An overwhelming majority of us don't want it. We don't like it. We don't like the individual mandate, but we certainly don't want to make Medicaid a middle-class program. I don't want to live in a state where 1/3 of the population can't pay for their health insurance. I mean, it's ridiculous.
If there's anyone in the state of Arkansas that thinks that the people of Arkansas are okay with Obamacare, I would just refer them to Blanche Lincoln, former Congressman Marion Barry, former Congressman Mike Ross, former Congressman Vic Snyder, all Arkansas Democrats that voted for Obamacare who are all no longer in office because of their votes for Obamacare. People of Arkansas do not want this plan, and I think it is outrageous, and it is just a borderline betrayal that we have these Republican legislators now that have been elected on a promise of reforming Medicaid, and now they're down in Little Rock behind closed doors, and they're working out this deal. Again, we can't criticize the deal because we don't know what it is. They won't tell us what they're working on. This has been going on for weeks, and I think Michael Cannon really hit the nail on the head. He said, this is cronyism, and Republicans like cronyism. This is Republicans, they like this idea because they're going to be able to take our money and use it to pay off private insurance companies. It's essentially just one big giant subsidy from the taxpayers to private insurance companies. And I don't think that, I've heard some criticism, again, from people who, they won't go on the record with this criticism, but they tell me behind the scenes, well, Nick, you just don't really understand, and this is a free market idea, and this is going to save us all this money. But guess what? Even if it's less expensive than the public Medicaid expansion, we still can't afford it. And it's still Obamacare. It is still the establishment of Obamacare in the state of Arkansas. And I'll tell you, too, this is another thing that Michael Cannon really hammered home on. Americans for Prosperity, God bless them, brought him in, got him in front of some legislators this week, and he made a lot of good points, and I don't think, there were some of them were not very happy with some of the things that he said, but he spoke the truth. 8 out of 10 people that would be covered by Medicaid expansion are already insured by private insurance companies. So 8 out of 10 people that are already insured are going to be eligible for this new program. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that their employers are going to continue to pay for their insurance when there's a quote-unquote free option out there for them? No, employers are going to start dropping people off their coverage in order for them to save money, and the Medicaid rolls are just going to explode. We already can't, I keep going back to this. We can't afford the Medicaid program that we have. The people in this state that are already enrolled on Medicaid, we can't afford to pay for them. And yet now we're talking about adding another $200,000. And I'll tell you another thing. There's all this talk about, and the governor said this in his State of the State address, and I know we talked about it at the time, but, the the feds are going to pay. They're going to pay for 90% of this, and so the cost is going to be so minimal to Arkansas, only 10%. Well, number one, that 10% of something like $1 billion, that's still $100 million. That's still $100 million that we don't have. And the other thing is that the Obama administration, as long ago as about 2 years ago, has already shown indications that they're willing to change that rate. They realize that they don't have the money to put up a 90% match. And so about 2 years ago, back in the summer of 2011, they floated the idea of changing that, and what it's called is blended rates, and we're going to have a lot more research coming out about this in the next couple of weeks. But basically, they're making this promise to the states that they're going to pay 90% of the cost, and there's a very real possibility. Michael Cannon said it's not just a possibility. He said it's going to happen, that they're going to renege on that promise.
Of course.
And they're going to pay less than that, and the states are going to be stuck with it. And that's kind of one of Michael Cannon's comments to the legislature was like, why would you go along with this plan? You cannot trust the federal government. You know that they are going to try to screw you every chance that they get. And when you put 200,000 new people on the Medicaid rolls, you are going to be stuck figuring out how to pay for them because the federal government is going to leave you hanging out to dry. And it's the same thing with the healthcare exchanges and all of these different aspects of Obamacare. If the Arkansas legislature refuses to implement these programs, we can stop the implementation of Obamacare in Arkansas. It's that simple. It's going to save us millions and hundreds of millions of dollars if we just have a few politicians that are willing to say no.
I agree, and it's going to be hard, especially here in Northeast Arkansas, getting through to our Democrat legislators here, Butch Wilkins, Homer Linderman, Harold Copenhaver. They're going to be on board, and they're going to go to their constituents and say, this is going to be a bipartisan thing because Davy Carter wants it. Davy Carter wants this. He thinks it's a good idea. Other Republicans think it's a good idea. We've got to get on the phones, folks. We got to convince people and convince our legislators that this is ridiculous, that we don't want Obamacare. And let me tell you what. Let me take that a step further, Nick. When the federal government does betray us like they will and leave us with more and more money, that's going to mean higher taxes in Arkansas. Because when they can't pay for something, they're going to have to tax Arkansans. So one of the biggest things, they always said, Obamacare, nobody's going to see a tax increase. That's the biggest bunch of baloney that has ever been sold to the American people, or at least ranks in the top 10. And the bottom line is, if they do this Medicaid expansion or the state exchanges or whatever, and I know those are two different issues, we're going to eventually see higher taxes in Arkansas, higher local taxes in Arkansas, because they're going to have to come up with the money somewhere.
No, absolutely. And one of the things that, one of the taxes that's about to go into effect if Arkansas chooses to implement the exchanges is called the employer mandate tax. And what that does is it says every employer in the state of Arkansas that employs more than 50 people, if they don't provide health coverage for those 50 people, they can be fined up to $2,000 per employee. And unless I'm wrong, by my math, that's about $100,000 a year for those employees that they do not insure.
And that's the definition of tyranny, in my opinion, when you're telling people how they can run their business and interfering with the free market. I mean, good grief.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know what? We have the ability to stop it here in the state. If the legislature refuses to implement the exchanges, Arkansas employers will be exempt from that tax because Obamacare will not be in effect here. And so that tax cannot be levied because the exchanges don't exist. So that's all the legislature has to do. There's two things that the legislature has to do, and there's two things that your listeners should stress to their legislators when they write them and call them. Do not expand Medicaid, and do not implement the exchanges. If they do those two things, we can stop Obamacare from being implemented here. And Michael Cannon believes we can force another repeal vote in Congress on Obamacare. Because, look, if we don't implement the exchanges, then the feds have to do it. And they can't afford to do it. And they know that they can't afford to do it. And so they're going to either have to repeal the law or they're going to have to try to come up with the money, which we can hope that the Republicans in the Congress will not let that happen because they control the purse strings. So it's very simple. There's very simple two answers to stopping Obamacare in the state. Do not expand Medicaid. Do not implement the exchanges. And if we can do that, we can hopefully turn this thing around. But we can't afford this. We cannot afford the expansion. We can't even afford the private option. We've got all these legislators out there. I'm hammering away at this because I've got all these consultants and all these people in my ear telling me, oh, Nick, it's a free market option. It's a free market option.
Bull crap, it's cronyism. It is cronyism.
It is cronyism. I love the way Michael Cannon said it. He said, I believe it's a free market approach when there's no public money involved. But as long as there's public money involved, it's a subsidy, it's cronyism, it's not free market. This is the government intervening even further in the healthcare industry. And another aspect, and your listeners need to be aware of this, because this is what legislators are saying around the Capitol. I heard them saying it just the other day. The hospitals, all the hospitals in this state, and I think there's a big hospital up there in Jonesboro. I'm sure there's a couple up there in northeast Arkansas. There's a ton around here in central Arkansas. They've all got their hands out, and they're going to their legislators, and they are putting a ton of pressure on them. A lot of these hospitals are telling their legislators now that they're 1 year away from bankruptcy because the money's drying up, because they don't get reimbursed for a lot of their Medicaid expenses.
Right.
And so they're taking hits for all this. And so they're pushing all of their legislators in the House and the Senate to go for the expansion because they want the money. And
I think I know how Paul Bookout will vote then. He works for St. Bernard's Hospital here, so there's no question how he's going to vote.
That might be a little bit of an indication. And we've got a big hospital. We've got a big hospital up where I live, a regional hospital in White County. But the bottom line is,
I've got to hit this road. But do you have any legislators that work for it? I mean, because at some point, especially with this, you think there'd be a conflict of interest on that particular issue here. Are there any legislators that work for the big hospital, like there are?
In White County, not that I know of. We've got. Not that I know of, but I know there's a lot of overlap. I mean, it's a small community, so you've got people that, family members and other things that are kind of related to the healthcare industry. But, Michael Cannon, what he told one of the legislators who was at the lecture, he said, look, this is what you need to tell your hospital administrators. The government has let you down. The government is the reason that you are in this financial mess. Why would you think that the answer to bankruptcy and the answer to the financial problems that you're in and facing is more government? The government is not going to fix these problems. The only way that we're going to fix healthcare is to trim back government and lower costs and lower intervention in the healthcare market. That's the only way that these hospitals are going to be able to survive, because with all these mandates and with all these things coming through, did you know, I mean, maybe you knew this, but this was kind of shocking to me, that 1 out of 3 doctors in America do not accept Medicaid. 4 out of 5 dentists don't accept Medicaid. I mean, that is astounding to me. And the reason is simple, is because they take these patients and they only get reimbursed a certain rate that is a lot lower than the market rate, and they essentially take a loss on all these patients that they see. And so that's why all these hospitals are hurting so much, is because of all these government programs. And they'll blame it on uncompensated care, and they'll blame it on all these things. I encourage you to go out, and your listeners go out and check out Heritage. Heritage has the Heritage Foundation has a new paper out about the cost versus the savings of having people in coverage, because Obama's going out and all these legislators are going out saying, well, if we have more coverage, then that will lower the cost of uncompensated care and we'll come out ahead in the long run. Well, that's hogwash, because we'll have more people insured, but we're going to have a lot more people insured, and there's going to be a lot more expenses associated with that than there are going to be savings.
The whole thing, like I said, we've got to rally the troops. Like you said, rally the troops and get this out of here. So feel free. I know you always post our sessions after they're online, but we need to get. I think maybe this segment has addressed a lot of the concerns. So if we could get this video out to as many people as we possibly can, Nick, all your great information will get out there, and we can start stopping Obamacare in Arkansas.
Absolutely, I agree, and I just encourage people one more time: contact your legislators, and if they tell you that this is a free market approach, call them out on it, because everything that I've seen indicates exactly the opposite.
Yeah, and maybe we'll get to see a plan soon, something on paper.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That would be nice.
All right, Nick Horton from the ArkansasProject.com. Be safe in your travels, sir, and thank you so much for pulling over to have a good conversation with us.